Hi, this is Steve de Jong, and the CEO of VRIFY Technology. Excited to have Tim Smith, CEO of GoldMining Inc., recently listed on the NASDAQ. Um, Tim, I'm excited for this one. As we were just saying, we have VRIFY has a lot of clients, and I can't really keep on top of it all right now. So this is going to be the first time I'm actually seeing all of this content as well. So excited to hear your story and get into some visuals as well. Over to you.
Thank you, Steve. Good morning. Thanks very much for having me. Really excited to have the opportunity to be able to speak, about our brand new company, USGO Inc., which we launched just recently via an initial public offering. In fact, it was less than 2 months ago, just back in late April. We're now trading on the NASDAQ exchange under the stock ticker USGO. So excited to have an opportunity to walk folks through our exciting Whistler property up in Alaska. And of course, I'll just give a quick plug to our new website as well. A ton of information there, including the VRIFY interactive content, so folks can walk themselves through at their own leisure the 3D content. The website is www.usgoldmining.us.
So everything we're going to go through today, if somebody's interested, they can go and click through themselves and play with the content and send you a note, etc. If they'd like.
Exactly.
Perfect. Let's get into it.
Sure.
So where are we
Okay.
going to start?
Let's bring up some content here. So a little bit of background. US Gold Mining is a spinco from the parent company GoldMining Inc., which acquired the Whistler asset from Kiska. Folks might remember Kiska Metals. We acquired it back in 2015. And with rising metal price and some other really key catalysts that have come to bear in recent years, what we wanted to do was spin the asset, the Whistler gold copper asset, into a brand new company, obviously with dedicated funding, also with a dedicated management team, so that we could advance, accelerate the advancement on the Whistler property. So here we are. We're looking at south central Alaska, essentially. And I'm just going to highlight the location here of Whistler. This is our Whistler property out here about 100 miles to the northwest of Anchorage. And I'll just circle Anchorage as well. So obviously Anchorage, most people would be aware it's the main city in Alaska. It has a population of around, let's say, 300,000 people. And also just north of Anchorage, you've got the Matsu area, which includes the fastest growing population center of Alaska, with the cities of Willow and Palmer. So out here on the right-hand side of the image, essentially what you've got is the center of population and infrastructure, including major highways. Let me just use a different color for that. So you've got railway and highway that heads up from Anchorage and then out to Yukon and back into Canada, and also northwards up to Fairbanks. But there's no infrastructure currently west of that. However, you'll notice some lines on the map. Let me just delete what we're showing here so far, Steve, and I'll use a different color to highlight one of the key catalysts that got us really excited about the opportunity to potentially advance, unlock the value, and develop the Whistler story. Currently, we access the Whistler property. Again, I'll just circle that out here in the northwest, 100 miles from Anchorage. We access it via air. We have an airstrip and a camp out at the Whistler property. We can also access it via in the winter months via this winter road. This trail is blazed. This allows us to get heavy equipment and bulky equipment in during the winter. But what we're really excited about is this proposed West Susitna access road, outlined here in purple. Now, this essentially is a state-sponsored, a state government roads to resources initiative. The state has put $8.5 million into this so far to design the road, and it's this purple line here. Essentially, this road will link an existing port facility down here at Port Mackenzie to the Whistler property, and it will directly tie into our own infrastructure to the trails and the airstrip immediately adjacent to Whistler. So this is government-designed road. $8.5 million put into that so far. They're taking the lead on permitting that road as well. They're talking about potentially building this road as early as 2025. It's easy terrain across the Matsu Valley. Essentially, it's about 100-mile straight shot, probably about 75 miles across the plain here, and then continue up the Squentna Valley into Whistler here. So great terrain overall, easy road building. And, one final thing I'll just point out here as well is that part of that alignment is tied in with the proposed gas pipeline to the Donlin property, which comes from the Beluga plant down here on the coast. There's a big gas field in the Cook Inlet to the south. That powers all of the electricity for the Anchorage and the Matsu borough. So this is a proposed pipeline that Barrick Gold and Nova Metals are proposing that will run all the way up to Donlin. And again, you can see that running right past the Whistler property. So let's keep going. I want to now take everybody in to the Whistler property itself. So we're just going to zoom in right over here on the next slide here. So here's a 3D view of the property. It's a large property. It's about 54,000 acres total. If we put that into square kilometers, I think it's about 217 or thereabouts. You've got a bar scale on the bottom here, so you can kind of get a sense for the overall scale. And it's about 40 kilometers north-south and about 15 kilometers east-west at the widest part. And I'll just also draw everybody's attention to the red stars, which are the actual deposits. So you've got Island Mountain in the south, and you can see that the land holding is kind of made up of three main claim groupings connected along the Squentna Valley. So in the south, you've got Island Mountain. In the north, you've got the Whistler Raintree area, two more red stars, so two existing deposits in the ground up here. And out to the west, we've got some exploration ground here. This is the Muddy Creek area.
And so sorry, one point of clarification. It's the Whistler project, but the Whistler deposit is within the Whistler project. That right?
Yeah, exactly, Steve. So yeah, we talk about the Whistler project, which is the entire land holding that we just showed in the previous slide. But of course, the flagship within that, or the namesake, if you like, is the Whistler deposit, which I've just outlined here. And you can see there's also a smaller deposit off to the east here, the Raintree deposit. So maybe I should just pause for a second there just to describe these. So essentially, these are gold, copper, silver deposits. They are porphyry copper deposits, but gold-rich variants of that. So interesting variant. We tend to talk about gold equivalent in terms of our grade, and just to give everybody those numbers again. So when I combine all three of our deposits, Whistler, Raintree plus Island Mountain, in the indicated category, we have around 2.99 million ounces. I rounded it up earlier to 3 of gold equivalent ounces at a grade of 0.79 grams per ton gold equivalent, and then an additional 6.45 million ounces at a grade of about 0.63 grams per ton gold equivalent. So what we wanted to show here was really the terrain. A lot of people think when you're up in Alaska, is that you're up in the mountains. People think of glaciers and polar bears, but down here in South Central Alaska, we're really in some pretty easygoing terrain, very low lying relief here. Easy topography. If I just kind of rotate this around for everybody, you can get a sense that it's pretty flat.
Those mountains in the background is how you always. That's what you think when you hear Alaska or Project in Alaska. Is that sitting off in the distance right behind you there?
Yeah, precisely. And I mean, look, Island Mountain is a mountain. If we get time, we'll take a look at that later. But it has also the benefit of having a great stripping ratio in the pit that we've modeled there so far. So before I move on from this slide, and we're going to take everybody on a virtual tour as if you're hovering in a helicopter right over the top of Whistler in a moment here. But before I do that, I just wanted to point out a few things. First of all, on the last slide, I talked about the winter road coming in from the east. Here it is again, tying in directly to our camp. And of course, that proposed West Susitna access road that I spoke about, this State of Alaska Roads to Resources initiative, which you can see is actually designed to tie in directly to our infrastructure. So I'll just draw this out. This is the trail that currently links our camp with Whistler. So with a bit of practiced eye, I can see that in the Google Earth image here. but I'll just draw that out. And of course, here's the camp immediately adjacent to the Whiskey Bravo airstrip. So currently we access the property, as I mentioned earlier, via the airstrip during the summer, but we can utilize that winter road during the winter. We can drive directly from the Whistler camp right up to Whistler itself. And of course, in the future, we will have that proposed West Susitna Road coming directly to the property.
Great.
So the next view we're going to take, we're going to be hovering directly over Whistler. And this is just some beautiful drone footage that we had collected last year. A company called Fairweather Sciences LLC, which is a Doyon company now, collected this for us late last summer. So this is end of August, beautiful summer's day. We're hovering directly over the Whistler deposit. Whistler daylights as a streaky, sort of red, rusty streak in the hillside here. You can see that. I'll just outline it here. Let's even use red for it. This is outcropping copper gold mineralization in the Whistler porphyry deposit. Whoops, just turn the pen off while I rotate back out. So we're looking directly along the ridge line here. You can see it's gentle topography. We're just up above the tree line here in the lower part of the tundra. We're looking east over towards the Raintree deposit, which is about 1 kilometer away. We're going to see all of this in 3D shortly soon as well. And then when I rotate around, we're just going to look back to the south so we can see the Whistler camp in the distance here. It's about 2.5, nearly 3 kilometers in a straight line, a little over 3 kilometers when you take that trail that I outlined earlier and drive up to Whistler itself. And up in the distance, I'll just use a different color here because it's a little bit bright against the sky, but you can see Island Mountain closer up into the headwaters of the Squentna River Valley, which is about 20 kilometers.
And here we are, early June. Where are things at on site? Are we opening up the camp?
Yeah, exactly. Let me take another transition here. We'll hover right over the camp. Sorry, clicked one too far. Let's just pause here for a second. I'll rotate so we're looking down on the camp. So Kiska built a camp here back at the start of the last decade. We have accommodations here. We have machinery and equipment on site, generators, pumps, bores. We have a core shack ready to go. Essentially, what we're doing right now is just making sure that the accommodation is ready to move into. We have to build a new kitchen dining room, so that's underway right now, and a small office facility. But the core shack's good to go. We'll upgrade the cut shack. We're ready to start drilling as soon as all of that is done. And if I just sort of rotate again a little bit for everybody, you can see how close we are to the airstrip. We've got bulk fuel tanks up on the airstrip there, so we can bring the fuel in. We can pump directly into the tanks. We can then transport that via the road. And I'm just going to pick a view here and draw some of that road for everybody. I want to try and get the distance in the background. So you can obviously see the trail in the sort of the foreground here that comes from the airstrip down to camp. It kind of just wanders slightly off shot here, but then it switches back up through the forest here. It goes past Raintree and then up onto the ridge. Let me just rotate a little more there and draw that again so you can see here's the trail coming through the forest past Raintree. It disappears behind the ridge, but ultimately that trail takes us directly to Whistler. So we can drill right through 4 seasons here. Certainly Kiska, the previous owners, did in the past. They drilled right through winter. We're not at the top of a mountain. We're not reliant on helicopters. We can use skid drills here. We can drive directly to the drill just a few kilometers away. So it's just fantastic terrain.
And you're right about that. It feels a lot more like the Yukon, almost the Yukon tundra, than it does sort of the Alaskan mountainous terrain that we all think of when we hear Alaska.
Yeah, we're excited not only for obviously the ability to execute on exploration in the coming months and over the coming years, but also ultimately, once we take this through PEA, which we think is going to be, extremely positive, and into feasibility, we've got plenty of great terrain here to find space for the infrastructure required for future potential mine site development.
Awesome. Let's jump right into it.
Yeah, so I thought I'd just take us back to just sort of place ourselves back in terms of an overview spatially. But we're going to this time zoom again into Whistler, the Whistler deposit, but we're going to zoom in underground this time. So here we go. So what you're seeing here, obviously, we're looking from underground up towards the deposit. The first thing, I would point out here is that we're seeing the modeled pit shell that constrains the mineral resource estimate. Obvious, to most, but I will just make the point, there is no historic mining here. This is a future potential pit shell that has been used simply to constrain the mineral resource estimate. It's cut at $1,600 gold and about 325 copper. Yeah, 325 copper. So you're looking at the drilling here at Whistler on the left. So this is Whistler, and this is Raintree over here. So you can see there's a small open pit resource at Raintree. Later on, when I pull up the model, you'll see that there's an underground resource at a higher grade cutoff below the Raintree open pit as well. So we total about 70,000 meters here. That drilling was done, I guess it started as early as the late 80s. So that was Caminco back then. Kennecott then picked up the ground in the late 90s. Eventually, that was optioned off to just walking folks through the history here to a company called Geoinformatics. And Geoinformatics eventually merged with Rimfire to create Kiska. So Kiska owned and operated the property up until about 2015, at which point GoldMining acquired it. Since then, we have rerun the resources and the reserves, and our technical reports, of course, are on our website with an effective date as of last September. So these are not historic resources. These are fully compliant with respect to both 43101 and being NASDAQ listed, of course, also SEC SK 1300. So I'll just switch that off, and I'm just going to walk people through. So you've been looking at gold grade here. Let's transition to copper. So being a copper gold porphyry system, of course, the gold and the copper occur together. Mineralogically, we tend to see gold mainly occurring as electrum in association with chalcopyrite. And I don't want to overlook it. There's some silver content here as well. By value and volume, this is about a 70% gold deposit with perhaps about 29% copper and a little bit of a contribution from silver. But I think the key thing here is, for people who are really not technically minded, is all three of those minerals occur together. So when they're mined and processed, obviously, we'll be aiming to optimize, maximize the recovery of those sulfides that contain the copper and gold, and the silver will come along with that. So I wanted to just highlight a couple of the intercepts here. We've turned some of the drilling off, so we're just highlighting a few key intercepts, just to give people a bit of a flavor for the sort of grades that we're seeing here. Pretty low grade deposit overall, but I'm going to talk more about that in a moment. It certainly has scale at 6.5 million ounces inferred and 3 in the indicated. It's a large deposit. So there's a couple of different ways to cut it. The way we've done it within the pit shell here and the definition of the mineral resource estimate to date is to use a $10.50 US per ton NSR cutoff, which equates to about a 0.3. So that's why when we show the legends for gold equivalent, we'll be showing about a 0.3.
And those resources you're talking or referencing, those are pit contained resources.
Pit constrained, exactly. Or
pit
contained, yes, as you said, yes, exactly. And so within that, though, we certainly see areas of higher grade. I'm highlighting 164 meters here at 1.23 grams and 0.26% copper, and nearby that over 300 meters at 1.1 gram and 0.3% copper. We see adjacent to that some really broad, wide intercepts of 285 at 0.44 gold and 0.15% copper. So there's a range here, and if we flip that into cross section, you can see how that's distributed across the block model. And I think probably a couple of key takeaways here. The first being that the mineralization comes right to surface. Let's just make sure that that's clear for everybody. This is the surface line here. So when we were in that drone view looking down on that rusty red streak on the hillside, that was the outcropping mineralization right at surface. So essentially no to very low strip to get into mineralization. There is some glacial till here about 5 meters deep, and it gets as deep as 15 down on the flats, but no major overburden to clear before we get into open pitable mineralization. And the other thing you can see with the pit outline, again drawn on this classic cross section, is that it's a pretty low strip ratio in terms of mineralization above a 0.3 gram cutoff, which is green and hotter, compared to the white space, which would be the waste.
And is there much of an opportunity within the areas, like the waste rock? Is that more from, is there a lack of drilling in those areas as well? Like, is there an opportunity to convert some of that in?
I love that question, and I'm going to talk a little more to that in 3D shortly. But yeah, look, 77,000 meters is certainly enough to produce, a large 6 million gold equivalent ounce deposit in inferred. With another 3 million ounces in indicated. We certainly see plenty of opportunity, not just in converting that inferred to indicated, but expanding that. So that's going to be a big part of our push over the coming weeks and months once we start drilling. Our focus really this summer is going to be on the Whistler deposit, improving the delineation and extensions, in particular of high grade. And, the high grade here is fairly self-evident, but I'm just going to circle it. There's a really nice high grade core here. That comes right to surface. And just to highlight those grades, I'll use a different color here because I'm going to draw over the legend right now. I'm talking about these red and magenta blocks that are better than a gram gold equivalent per ton.
And so the high grade section, it looks like the high grade for the most part, that's the indicated area as well. So your high grade section is more defined.
Well picked up. Yes. So I wasn't going to go into that detail, but you can see that we have distinguished the stippled blocks are the indicated classified blocks. Unstippled are inferred. So yes, you're quite right. Where we have more drilling, we tend to get better grades. So that's tantalizing in that we do see indications of higher grade. Probably should have used a different color to really highlight that. But there's some blocks of high grade overall within an envelope of medium grade, very poorly constrained by drilling so far. And we're quite excited about the potential also to pull mineralization across this fault. Let me use a third color here, and we're going to see this in 3D. So there's a fault running through the middle that's, oops, sorry, bad drawing there. Let me try and do that again without the wobble at the bottom. This is called the divide fault. It's a hard boundary in our model right now. We're about to embark on a relogging process to ensure that we're happy this model exists, and if it doesn't exist, we're going to rethink that in terms of the impact that has on the geostats in the resource model. And we think there's a lot of opportunity, essentially, to pull high-grade mineralization. Red's probably a better color to choose here, across this pit, and deeper. Lots of opportunities here, and we'll see some of those in 3D as well. But let's look at it in 3D. Now, I won't linger on this. I talked about the divide fault already. We're going to be modeling that to determine whether we think that's real and its impact. But what I just wanted to walk everybody through was to get a bit of a screenshot here of the model itself. So we're just starting. We're going to peel away, start with the inferred, the entire mineral resource estimate, and peel away some of the lower grades to get into that high grade core. So the yellow blocks here, as you can see from the legend, are, let's use a different color. We're starting mainly seeing 0.3 to 0.5 gram gold equivalent here. But as we just strip that, first of all, that lower grade inferred away, and we're just showing the indicated now, again, we're seeing that blanket of lower grade. But let's just strip that away so that you can get a sense for how coherent and cohesive this core of high grade is. So we're now looking
we're looking at is this indicated? This is the above 0.5 indicated.
Exactly. Thank you, Steve.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and again, I'll just draw people to the legend. So we're now looking at everything orange and above, which, as you say, yeah, 0.5 grams and better gold equivalent. And one more click here, we're just going to strip away that medium grade, that 0.5 to 1 gram, and just show the 1 to 2, and you can see some magenta blocks in there, which are better than 2 grams gold equivalent. And if I just rotate, let's just zoom in a little bit here and rotate around, you can get a sense for really how much drilling there is, but also how little drilling there is. And one thing that always catches my eye is the lack of drilling in this orientation here, constraining that high grade. We're really just allowing the geostats to kind of model it as far as we're comfortable, but there's the opportunity for more drilling in that part of the pit. There's also some opportunity to take it deeper as well. You can see that there's some higher grade intercepts on some of the deeper drill holes. So to bring that high grade deeper down, overall, I should back up a second, perhaps give people a sense of scale. I'll just turn off the annotations here so I can zoom out. The total depth that we're looking at here for this pit is about 500 meters from surface to the bottom of the cone. So that's about 500 there. And we're looking at about 800 east-west and about 600 meters north-south. So just a little bit of scale, and I think that helps also speak to the scale of the high-grade core that we see in the middle of the Whistler deposit.
And the bulk of the when you look at, say, a 0.5 cutoff for the indicated, what roughly, like, percentage of total resources sit within that 0.5% of indicated when you look at sort of the total resources? Sorry, you might not have that one off the top of your head.
I might not have that one off the top of my head, but I can certainly direct people to look at the sensitivity tables within the 43-101. So this was just to give a picture of obviously the proximity of the Raintree deposit, the fact that we do see high grade cores within the Raintree pit. Of course, when we cut our underground model, and this is cut at a $25 per ton NSR shell, we can see a coherent, potentially block caveable resource beneath Raintree. And of course, that also speaks to the potential opportunity to follow Whistler below open pitable levels, as if we can follow that high grade core deeper to develop longer term high grade underground mining resources. And one final thing I think I really wanted to just speak to today was the exploration opportunity outside of the existing resources. So within the Whistler property, as I've mentioned, the Whistler property contains the Whistler deposit. Let me just circle that. It contains the Raintree deposit. This is where we were just looking underground. But you also see these yellow stars. These are drill prospects, if you like. And what I want to show you next is some modeling that we've done. So it's not uncommon. I think a lot of people who are interested in porphyries will understand that typically they come with a magnetite anomaly. There's either magnetite in the host intrusive and or magnetite introduced during the hydrothermal mineralizing process. So what we typically see, or sometimes see, are mag highs. Sometimes they're referred to as bullseye mag highs. They're essentially circular, very high to intense magnetic anomalies. And what we're seeing here at the kind of 30,000 foot view, and I'll just circle it. Overall, you've got these very broad areas of overall high magnetics. You can kind of see yellows and oranges and reds here, whereas background, through the middle here, the country rock metasediments don't have any magnetite, so it's pretty low magnetism. But then you see these areas of elevated magnetite in the north and the south that are underlying the Island Mountain here in the south and the Whistler Raintree area in the north. If we zoom up into the Whistler Raintree area, sometimes we call this the Whistler orbit area, because this is an area that we're looking for satellite deposits that within the orbit of the main Whistler deposit itself. So I'm going to have to rotate this for everybody because this will look a little confusing at first. But if I just sort of spin this gently, what you can see is that you're seeing a kind of a smooth surface. This is called an isoshell. It's essentially a magnetic model of the rock that contains the high magnetite. So I think probably the first key takeaway, we're just going to zoom in a little bit here, is that you see a strong relationship between magnetite and the Whistler deposit. We were looking just a few moments ago at the open pit and obviously the block model in that. This is the intrusive body, this column, if you like, or stock of highly magnetic rock, which we think, and we've essentially picked a surface here that we think best represents the shape of the diorite ore body, or sorry, the diorite intrusive that contains the Whistler gold copper deposit.
And Tim, when you say pick a surface, you do the geophysics, find out, sort of map the entire project in 3D, and there's a certain or a specific level of and I'm non-technical, so excuse me if it's a really dumb question, like magnetic response that correlates with your mineralization, that you then go and look to see if there's other similar type signatures. Is that accurate?
That's exactly right, and I'm not going to try and restate that because that was perfect. It's pattern recognition for us. I mean, I'm not a geophysicist, so I'm not going to try and explain that in any more technical jargon either. But what you're seeing here, and if I just rotate this, you can see, just fix your eyes on Whistler as I rotate this a little more. So you can see that there's a large kind of columnar intrusion coming up from an even deeper, flatter surface of high mag. So what we think this is a deeper batholith, which is feeding to higher levels in the crust, these porphyry intrusions. And you'll note that I said intrusions because we're seeing multiple similar column-style structures coming up to surface. I probably don't need to draw them because, it's kind of fun just recognizing these things. I'm just going to outline a few here that
it sort of makes even people like me think I could go and pick some drill targets for you.
You totally could go pick drill targets. Just generally excited about the fact that Whistler is not a one-trick pony. We've already got Raintree, obviously. We've got proof of concept and that some other targets have been drilled in the past and they have intersected porphyry. We just need to do some more work to understand where is the core of the system adjacent to those, and perhaps with some more drilling we can bring those into resources, and then we have some new targets. It's a classic porphyry cluster, if you like.
And Tim, just wrap it up here. We've got about another minute or so. Maybe just a bit of what we can expect to see in the coming weeks and months from US Gold Mining.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mentioned that we put out some news last week, which really just talked to the fact that we've started. We've got our budget. It's been approved. We have a phased approach. Over the next 2 years, we've embarked on phase 1, which is a minimum 5,000 meter drilling program starting later this summer. We've got folks heading into the camp right now. They're actually undertaking a building project and cleaning up the existing accommodations, making sure that the machinery is working, the plant and infrastructure, so that we can then mobilize our geologists in July. We can bring the drill in and be drilling by hopefully early August, targeting initially Whistler, but also targeting the higher grade core of Raintree. And as we work through the prioritization, I'm excited to get some more drill holes into some of these new potential brand new discovery targets in the Whistler Raintree orbit. So yeah, we'll certainly be keeping the market updated with respect to upcoming progress, and of course drill results. Watch the space later in the fall.
Perfect. And then timing, and on the back of that, timing of the P8, I'm assuming that's probably into 2024.
Yeah, so we will complete the drilling in Whistler and Raintree in particular this summer. As I say, assays by the end of the year that will update and inform an updated geologic model and a mineral resource estimate update. So we're targeting Q1 and Q2 of next year to get those 2 models completed. So into the second half of next year to start work on that PEA.
Yeah, fascinating stuff. Well, thanks so much for taking the time to walk through it today.
Delighted, and look, I look forward to giving folks updates. There's certainly more to talk about. We didn't get to Island Mountain today, down to the south, which is another exciting target. We didn't get to Muddy Creek, and of course, looking forward to being able to spotlight some drill results later in the year.
Great. All right, Tim. Well, thank you.
Thanks so much, Steve.
All the best.